everyone, it's Caroline, and I am super excited for this video today because we are going deep. Because we are going to be talking about what I'm going to posit is the most important, the most fundamental habit that you need to build, not just in your career, but in your life, right? And so no, I'm not talking about productivity tips. I'm not going to be talking about getting up at 5 a.m. I'm not going to talk about any sort of prescriptive habit that we usually sort of think about when we think of habits, right? How can I operationalize this? What can I do? What action can I take? We're going to talk about something much more fundamental, much more deep, and much more powerful than any one thing than you can do. And in fact, what I'm hoping to show you today and reflect back to you is that this habit actually runs through and underpins every single move we make. So what is this habit? All right, so the habit I'm going to talk with you today about is trust. Trust. And I would argue that anything worthwhile doing is not possible without trust. So let me say that a different way. Anything worth doing in your life, you need trust. There needs to be trust there. So let's break this down. I'm going to talk about how this shows up with self-trust, and particularly I'm going to share a lot of examples about what I see in my one-on-one coaching with people, how self-trust or lack thereof shows up. I'm going to talk about how trust impacts our relationships, and that holds us back. And then we're going to talk, we're not going to crack it open, right? This is why I'm a coach, but I can give you some ideas of how to start on the path to building trust as a habit. So hopefully that sounds intriguing. So let's dig in. So without trust, let's break this down. Nothing worthwhile is doable without trust, right? Without trust, there is no vulnerability, right? Let's think about this. How are you going to show up fully as your best self? How are you going to walk into that room and show people who you are if there's not some level, right? There can be some fear and trepidation, but if there's not some basic foundational belief that people are going to meet you there, that they're not only going to see you for who you really are, but that they're going to accept it and ideally elevate it, right? No one in their right mind is going to be truly vulnerable if they don't believe this truth. You need to have some basic trust in order to show up as yourself, right? That's why we get into this habit of splitting our personas, right? Showing up one way outside of work and showing up a different way at work, or showing up differently at work depending on who we're talking to, right? Whether we're managing up, talking to our team, talking to peers, people we feel on the same level with, people we don't feel on the same level with for whatever reason, right? Lack of trust. It's because we don't trust ourselves and or this other person. We'll break that down a little bit further as we get into this. But there's not that basic, like, yeah, it's safe. It's safe to show up and show myself and be unapologetically me. Right? So without trust, there is no vulnerability. Oh, what a sad world that is if we're not able to be vulnerable, as many of us are not allowing ourselves to be. Okay? Without trust, there is no creativity. This is a great one, right? Oh, Caroline, it's all been done before, right? There's nothing new. First of all, I don't agree with that limiting belief, but let's take it for the sake of this. Let's take that argument as true. Okay, nothing new. Everything's been done before. There's nothing new I can create. I would invite you to think about the same story that's been told a million times in films, books, music, art, right? It's the same story. It's the same story. And yet there's something in it for us that's new and intriguing each time. So much so that we might not even recognize the underlying story, right? How cool is that? Boy meets girl, boy loses girl, boy meets girl again, whatever. I don't even know the tropes, but you get the story. You get the gist, right? We've seen this over and over again, and yet the value is in how it's presented in a way that we don't even hear, oh, I've seen this before, right? It feels new and fresh. And so being creative, truly creative, tapping into that, right? Think of how much trust you need to like sit down and write every day, right? And trust this thread that you're following, this character you're developing, these jokes that you're writing, trusting that it's gonna lead somewhere, right? Even if you have a terrible writing day or a terrible painting day. Trusting this is worthwhile, trusting my time and energy is well spent. And we'll get on to spending money in a minute. But trusting this is a worthwhile endeavor to see where it goes. Ooh, huge trust, right? Not even trust that it's going to be received, but that I'm not wasting my time doing this. And conversely, what would it look like to trust this as a worthy pursuit for you, for no one else, just for you? This is worth me figuring out, writing this story, doing this thing, creating this poem. Without trust, there is no creativity, no true creativity. Without trust, there is no fully, completely stepping into our strengths. This is a super interesting one, right? So as one of the exercises that I do with my one-on-one clients, I have them reach out and get feedback from people. And brief rant, not the sort of feedback we're used to in the corporate space, right? Which is like the 10 things you're not doing well and you need to do better. And like the 2 things like, oh, okay, you did well on these, but focus on these things, focus on the gaps, right? This is not that. This is focusing on what people see in you that they don't see anywhere else, right? The strengths, the power, the good. And there is often so much resistance that comes up for people, right? Just asking, and this is not like asking strangers, this is asking close friends and loved ones, right? And colleagues that we like and respect, right? It's hard to, you can see how like it's hard to even trust like what comes up for some people when you think about trusting these people who we like and respect, trusting what's going to come back to us. And so resistance comes up with people, both in kind of like, oh, I don't want to do that for a litany of reasons. Sometimes it's interesting, they'll come up, oh, because those people don't truly know me. Well, that's interesting. Back to vulnerability. Why haven't you given them the opportunity to get to know you? What do you not trust about them? But then the second piece is like when that comes back, right? And it is such a cool exercise because the stuff that comes back from the people that we love and respect is insane in the best possible way. Like some of the comments and observations are so powerful and so beautiful. Like I'm, I get emotional reading it about other people. And yet some people will say, oh, well, whatever. Of course they're going to say that. That's my mom, right? Or of course they're going to say that's my best friends, right? Or they're positive. They say that stuff about everyone. Do they? What's making you not trust? What's making you not receive? Right? And so again, until we trust, we can't possibly take on and truly own those strengths. Right? Think about it, take yourself out of it for a second, right? If you can depersonalize it and imagine someone else receiving all of this praise and awareness and observation about what truly makes them special, what makes them sparkle and stand out from the crowd. And if you see that person kind of unwilling to recognize those elements in themselves, right? What are they missing out on? What are they depriving themselves of? What would happen if they took those on board and led and walked through the world with those strengths, truly believing and honoring them and trusting that they are true and that those elements, those observations make them special? So this is interesting because it just came up with someone I'm working with the other day, and she had received some, I mean, truly unique. It's always unique, the stuff that comes back, but some stuff that I had never seen, kind of these compliments and observations before. And, you know, we talked about her habit of making a joke when someone compliments her. You know, she's just so ready to push that away, which, by the way, money mindsets, if you're pushing away a free gift, such as a compliment, how are you going to accept true financial abundance or any abundance, right? If you're literally pushing away gifts, this is something someone gives to you, right? And anyway, back to this person I'm working with, and she was just like, it just makes me so, you know, I said, you know, what would it feel like to receive? Like, just take that on board. I've never seen anyone do this with anyone else's work before. You've made such an impression on this person, and this person is saying that what you did for them has made a super big impact on their life. What would it feel like to just receive that and own it and trust that it's true? And she said, it makes me feel so vulnerable. There we go, back to vulnerability again. So her homework for the week is to unpack that. What is it? What hurt happened? What are you protecting yourself from? What is that vulnerability, right? That's what vulnerability is about. It's a very natural and healthy instinct to protect ourselves from hurt, right? And the problem is, when we do not trust, we are not only protecting ourselves from the bad stuff that hurt us before, and legit, we are right to like never let hurt us again. We are also keeping at bay all the beautiful stuff, right? So trust, essential for vulnerability, creativity, to truly own our strengths. So that's how self-trust comes in. Let's pivot a little bit to trusting other people, or not trusting other people, as the case may be. And let's talk about this. So I have a couple stories I want to share. So one is, often, it's so interesting, trust often comes up with prospective clients. I see it, right? And they tend to ask a lot of questions about the coaching program, and what if it doesn't work, and what if this happens? They're looking for exit, right? Well, what happens if this happens? What happens? And the underlying belief, the filter, is that this is not going to work for me. I'm too different. I'm too broken. I'm not blank enough. I'm too much fill in the blank, right? That's what's underpinning this. The idea that this will not be successful. And so it manifests as a lack of trust. And so to them, and we often, invite people in, not everyone is willing to have it, but it often opens up the opportunity of a really beautiful conversation. Hey, I'm curious, I'm hearing a real lack of trust here. Would you say that's about lack of trust in me? I can take it. If you don't trust me, let's talk about it, right? Is it a lack of trust in yourself? That's big. Where else is that showing up? Oh, it's showing up everywhere. And why is it showing up, right? And we can start having and unpacking a really powerful pattern that is literally preventing them from getting what they want, right? Again, we've just illustrated. If you don't trust yourself, it's going to impede you in all these ways. If you don't trust other people, it's also going to impede you. Now, I'm not saying, caveat here, I'm not saying go out and trust absolutely everyone. Not everyone is deserving of our trust, rightfully so, right? What I'm saying is, when there's someone in front of you that you are not trusting for whatever reason, it's important to get curious and say, okay, is this about Caroline? Did Caroline break my trust? Is there something about her? I'm always so trusting and I don't trust her. Great, follow that instinct. If you don't trust me and you are generally a trusting person, I would get curious about it. It's always interesting when these things come up to get curious about, where it's coming from. But that's maybe a reason you shouldn't trust someone if you're always so trusting in this person. You get, like, I tend to get like a dark feeling. I actually see or feel like a dark cloud, like a blackness in their heart or around their aura, if that makes sense. So pay attention to those things. And also pay attention, right? If you are projecting a lack of trust onto this person because of a previous hurt or betrayal in the past. And that's often what's happening in, career coaching, or working with anyone. I mean, coaching, investing in a school program, working with a new boss, right? And evaluating, is this, a boss that I'm going to be able to be my full self with, right? Do I trust this person to have my back and promote me and advocate for me and support me, right? And allow me to show up with my edges, right? Or any sort of partnership. I think we tend to think of it a lot in romantic relationships, but trust is essential for any relationship. And so back to these coaching conversations, right? It gets to be a really beautiful exploration of, where is this lack of trust coming from? And is it about, the other person? Is it about yourself? Is it about both? Is it about this unique situation? Is this a pattern? Is it because you just came off, trauma? And I don't use that word lightly, but something traumatic that happened in your last job. Often that's what's at work there is, this person was completely betrayed and undermined by, someone that was a trusted colleague and friend in a lot of cases, right? So of course that's going to start showing up. Of course you're going to start viewing the world through that filter. And why it's so important to get curious when this comes up and pay attention to it. One thing I want to circle back to too, important to trust. And this has been a huge, huge learning for me. And it's a big part of my coaching as well. Why do we trust our thoughts more than our feelings? For most of us, not all of us, but so many of us have been trained, and the world is really set up and biased all over the place to really prize intellect, which also has a ton of inherent biases as to how we even think of intellect and, kind of rate certain ways of thinking above other ways of thinking, or creativity or approaches to things. But why are we so many of us, quick to dismiss the feelings? And so much more trusting of, well, hang on, I need time to think about it. Let me think about this. Let me run the scenarios. Let me reason through it. And what's so interesting, what's so often happening, right? When we think we're being super logical or rational and we're thinking our way into a solution, we're actually just having a conversation with our deepest, darkest fears, with our gremlins, right? It's not logic or rationale at all. What we're often doing is we're subverting the intuitive hit, the feeling, right? Think about this, right? Think about how pure and distilled and clear your feelings are about things. Why do I always walk away from this conversation feeling worse, feeling diminished, feeling stupid? Why do I always talk to this person and after, I've spent time with this person, I feel like the smartest, funniest, most beautiful person, right? Why do I feel bad when I try to approach my business this way? Why does this feel so much better to do it in the way I want to, right? These feelings are so pure and clear, and yet we are so quick to dismiss them. And, make up stories and spin these complicated scenarios, right? I want you to think about the last time you tried to reason through something and you were like, so complicated, right? Oh, I can't figure this out. This is my trouble all the time. when I'm dealing with human behavior in my personal life. I don't understand why would the person say this if really they meant this, right? Whereas, okay, when I connect with the feeling, it doesn't matter. I don't get spun up in this overthinking, over analysis, right? I just know it to be true, and that's enough. So I just invite you to begin trusting. Trust that feeling. Play with it. What would it feel like? What would it look like? Oh, that's a great example. So I'm working with someone else who we're towards the end of our coaching journey, and she's had all these great insights and awareness about what she wants, and it's really taken her on this beautiful, spiritual, like really impactful path. And she shows up and she's like, here's a job description, right? And it was for this job that just for me was kind of out of left field. Like, okay, how did we get from everything we've been talking about to this, right? And so we explored it. She sat with herself. She sat with her feelings. She sat with just getting clear and quiet. And she came back a couple weeks later and she was like, you know what? I don't know what it is about this job, but it's not right. And I trust that, right? And to me, this is the work. This is the work. More so, I know you're focused on career change and what are the elements and what are the widgets and what's the job titles and what does it look like and what's the industry and what companies I'm going to target. And all that is important, and none of that happens without this baseline of trust, right? Especially when it's about deviating from the traditional. Especially when it's about deviating from the should-dos, right? I get triggered, I get pulled into those should-dos, right? Oh gosh, I see a colleague kind of do like a funding round, right? And I'm like, oh, maybe I should have outside investors. And I'm just like, no, calm down. You don't want that, right? And it's so freeing. It's so freeing to trust, right? I really invite you in. How would it feel to trust that your way, following those feelings that feel good, that feel aligned, that feel like what you want to do, what would it feel like to trust those? And not only trust those feelings in your kind of day-to-day, but trust that that is building to something. And I'm not suggesting this is easy. This is a habit to build, right? Build that habit. Another example, working with someone who has been, often will subvert her natural instincts and intuition, and, kind of has this fundamental belief that, okay, well, the way other people have done it, I want to look to them first because maybe their way is better, right? And maybe their way is better. Like I'm probably one end of the extreme. It's like, I don't want to know I don't care how anyone else does it. I want to do it my way, which is not necessarily the best way to do it either. I'm not necessarily advocating to that, just explaining that's how I am. But I invite you to get curious. If your default is always that the answers are out there, that we have to look outside of ourselves, that there's always a better way of doing it, that your way is not as good or better. If that is a default, that everyone else is naturally kind of better, more talented, has the right answers, that's something to get curious about. Anyway, so she had been doing this thing that everyone in the creative space, it's kind of like I don't want to say a golden rule, but it's a book and exercise that everyone in the creative space kind of knows about. And I said, how long have you been doing this? And she was like, about 4 or 5 months. And I was like, well, how do you feel when you get up in the morning? We've been talking about like feeling engaged and excited and kind of leaning into your creative pursuits. And what was the word she used? Oh, I can't remember now, but it was the energy was kind of like she was dreading getting into creative pursuits. But it was I wish I could think of the word. It was like a really heavy word she was using, which who's gonna get into like empowered action if you're dreading getting into a creative pursuit? So anyway, we're exploring this activity she's been doing for a few months. And I said, how does it feel? And she was like, not very good. And I was like, does it feel like it's helping you get those answers and that clarity? And she was like, no. And I said, well, what would feel good? And like literally before the question I'd fully gotten it out of my mouth, she answered, oh, it'd be doing this other thing. All right, let's lead with that. Let's trust that thing that you can engage with, that you feel excited about, that really stirs your creativity, that people have given you feedback was life-changing for them when you did it before. How about we do that? Rather than the thing that everyone else is extolling the virtues of, but that is not working for you, right? Trust, so important when you're deviating from the norm, right? Because you're gonna have all of these examples out there of everyone saying, oh, this is the best thing ever, right? And it is so, so empowering and freeing and confidence building when you're like, yeah, I know 80% of the people are saying that. I guess I'm one of the 20% or the 2%, right? It's super freeing and calming. Feel into it. I'm curious what feelings come up for you. When I think of trust, I'm just like, yes, I'm gonna get there, right? The pressure falls away. I relax, I feel calm. I feel free, as I said, all right? And so one last story I wanna share with you is about, again, it's self-trust, and it's specifically about investing in yourself. And I mean, it happens to do with money, but it applies to, investment of time, energy, other investments. And it was honestly one of the most pivotal moments in my career as a business owner. And I guess a lot of people could look at it as a failure. So I wanna share the story with you. I share it in my money mindset course, by the way, so some of you might have heard this. So I share more detail. I'll try to give you the distilled version. So a few years into my business, I hired coaches kind of all throughout my business. That was one thing I think I've done pretty well on. But this coach was the longest term commitment, and it was by far the biggest financial investment. I'll just share the number. It was $18,000. And it ended up being a little bit more than that, I think. I think it was closer to $20,000, but whatever. It was a lot of money, especially considering what I was making at that time, right? So it was a fairly high percentage of what I was pulling in. And I remember first hearing the number and being like, I've worked with a bunch of coaches at that point. I had never heard that high of a number. Like, it was kind of completely out of my reference point for what one spends on coaches, right? So after the initial shock wore off, and it was interesting too, on that call there were a bunch of clues. I should have trusted my instincts about whatever else I was picking up on that call, but whatever, the story for another time. After I got over the initial shock, I decided to make the investment, because I was like, this, and I can't even remember the exact reasoning, but it was just fundamentally a trust in myself, right? I was like, this is not a move. Someone does not invest this amount of money in themselves if they don't trust that they're going to be successful, right? If they don't trust that they are going to wring every ounce of value out of it, right? It was a boss move for me. I remember putting down my credit card. I paid in full. I don't do payment plans. I paid in full, and I remember feeling like I was on top of the world, right? Which might seem alien or crazy to you, but for me, it was a commitment to be like, of course, I'm gonna make all of this back and more. This is the key that is gonna unlock me stepping into the next level of myself as a business owner, right? So now, I'm not advocating that you go out and spend a bunch of money just for the sake of it. I'm inviting you to key into the energy and key about if there's an investment that you want to make in yourself. Again, it could be time and energy. It doesn't necessarily need to be money. But whether it's going back to school, whether it's a coaching program that you want to take, whether it's a course you want to take, whether it's working with a coach, whether it's hiring someone else to help you with something in life, I really invite you to step into that And so the second part of the story is, so I invested that, I felt amazing. It was not a great coaching experience. My cohort, it was group coaching, and my cohort ended up completely revolting, and I ended up leaving the program early. I didn't get a whole lot out of it from that coach. I got some nuggets, but I got so much more from the process of showing up for myself and trusting and stepping into that and making it work, right? I got one of my best friends today from that program. I did learn some skills. I learned a whole lot about how I want to show up as a coach, right? And what I want to offer to people. Imagine, just a brief aside, one of my orientations is, I think heavily informed by that, I probably would have had it anyway, but heavily informed by that experience is, I always want to over deliver, regardless of the investment that I'm asking people to make in my courses or my programs or my one-on-one coaching. I want it to be priceless, right? From my cheapest offering, my money mindset, it's like a few $100. I want that to be invaluable, right? That's how I stand in my integrity and the value I deliver. And how awesome would it be actually if the world operated like that, right? Is that, we put stuff out into the world, and the things that we buy, we could trust that we were going to get more than what we paid for them. I know, pipe dream, capitalism, all that good stuff. But again, hopefully you hear the trust, right? And it's so important from that money mindset aspect. If you're thinking about starting a business or selling your art, selling your work, right? What if you led with that sort of trust? Like, heck yeah, of course I'm gonna put this out there. This is a steal. This ticket price is a steal. This price point for this painting, this is a steal. This will make you happy every day for the rest of your life if you hang it in your home, right? So let us talk now that hopefully you're starting to see how trust shows up for you, or lack thereof, right? I invite you to get curious about your own patterns, right? Is trust a pattern that shows up? And if so, what are the circumstances that it shows up in, right? Who are the particular people? Again, is it people with a certain profile at a certain level? Is it about certain circumstances that make you more or less trusting? Past experiences, right? That are, again, projecting. Oh, I got burned before in this situation, and so now every time I go into a similar situation, I'm assuming that I can't trust this person, right? Those are the sorts of things to be aware of. How would it feel to trust that you are on the right path? Trust that you are going to figure it out. If you spend the next 6 months, a year, walking this path, trusting that the answers will reveal themselves, right? It's big. I'm not suggesting it's easy. But before you even start that work, before you take any action, how would it feel? What would change for you if you were actually able to do that? How would it feel to trust when someone pays you a compliment? How would it feel to trust and take that on board? Ooh, why, thank you. I didn't realize it about myself. That feels good. What would change for you if you actually trusted the very things that people are reflecting back to you, that they like about you, that they appreciate about you, that they value about you? Here's a question for you. What do you require to be able to trust someone else? Right? It's a really fair ask. Whether it's something that you ask from them, hey, I need to see this from you first, right? That's happened actually with potential clients. They've said no to one-on-one coaching and then come into my networking program, and I had to build that trust with them. That's a fair ask, right? I love it when people find me off YouTube and say, hey, I want to work with you and trust me enough, right? What a beautiful gift. First of all, thank you all for those of you who have entrusted me to walk this path with you. Speaking of beautiful gifts, it's a beautiful gift. And so if you've been able to trust at that level, awesome. And it's totally okay if you need some time to get to know me a little bit more, to ask me questions, right? To read my stuff, to watch my videos. And not just about me, but from everyone around you, right? What do you require to be able to trust? What a beautiful habit to build in and of itself is kind of have the word boundaries is coming to mind, but that's not quite the right word. Your standards, right? Yes, before I give you the gift of my trust in you, I need to see these things, right? Or I just need some time, or I want to talk to you a little bit more, right? Ooh, I love this habit. I love this. I'm curious what comes up. When you kind of think about, right? It's a big, again, trust is about, we need that protection. We need some level of ability to know that we're safe, right? And I invite you, like, this is not like, letting down the walls so much that you shock your nervous system and don't feel safe, or put yourself into circumstances that are not safe. Don't do that. Stay safe and think about what you need to get there. So feel your way into that answer, and I'd love for you to share everything that has come up for you during this video down below. Thanks, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.